Hello and welcome to this interview with the Reverend Nadim, the Director of the Awareness Foundation. I'm Madeleine Davies and I'm Features Editor at the Church Times, and we'll be talking this afternoon about the conflict in Syria, looking back to some of its roots and asking Nadim where he thinks the future lies. I first interviewed you, Nadim, in 2012, which was the second year of the conflict. At that time, could you have imagined what was to follow?
I would not have imagined in 2012 that we would lose almost 1 million people in Syria. And I would not have imagined that half of the country would be on the move, either internally displaced or they are refugees outside the country.
You've often described Syria as a proxy war. And I wonder if you could share a bit with us briefly what you mean by that and what you think has driven this conflict.
Proxy war means that regional and international powers fight for their interests inside Syria. Like regional powers like Turkey, like Iran, like Saudi Arabia. So those are very much involved in the conflict. And if we go internationally, we see the United States, United Kingdom, Europe, all those powers, regional or international, are involved directly or indirectly with finance, military presence on the ground, or giving support and logistic support and weapons to the fighters there on the ground. So proxy war, it means not only the Syrians are fighting between each other, but also external powers, whether regional or international, are really involved and fighting for their own interests inside the country. And in Syria, we have to remember that we have gas, we have oil, and that came recently, not many years ago. And we are on the Mediterranean Sea. We are neighbors to Israel, we are neighbors to Turkey, we are neighbors to Iraq, and not far from Iran. And the demographic tapestry is very different from one country to the other, and the politics differ. So all this makes Syria a hot topic, hot place that people are fighting for their interests and a footstep inside Syria.
We've heard repeatedly from the UN that the only way that the conflict will end will be through a political settlement and through talks. This is something which you've said repeatedly right back to 2012. What will it take to make that a reality?
In the past, I always believed that let's empower the Syrians to come together and talk about the future of Syria, what kind of political system we want, what kind of religious tolerance we want, what kind of living together, citizenship we want. But recently, I am convinced that the decision of war and peace is not any longer in the hands of the Syrians. So the dialogue now moved from the hands of the Syrians, and Syrians are talking to the international and regional powers talking with each other. For example, the ceasefire was declared from Moscow, not from Damascus. It's not anymore the Syrians' decision to stop the war or not stop the war. And I do believe with all my heart, and history tells us that only behind closed doors such deals happen, not in front of the cameras and not in front of journalists. So what happened in Sochi lately was a circus, because everybody knew that nothing would come out, and nothing came out, because the deals, the real deals, behind closed doors were not ready yet. So the dialogue is still important on one level with the Syrians, that after the big deals happen, then the Syrians have to pick up the pieces, and the international and regional powers have to come together in a dialogue to agree who will get what and how to stop the war.
You've condemned the silence of churches and also their tendency to cite the complexity of the situation. So if you ask a church person for a comment on Syria, they might say, oh, well, it's very complicated. And I remember you saying to me, well, the Trinity is complicated and we still preach on it. What is it that you want from churches? What should they be saying? What should we be hearing from them?
At this time, Madeleine, it's not enough for the churches to be only a humanitarian aids providers. This is not only what Jesus did. If we want to learn from the Lord himself, he did not only give lectures and talks. He acted. He was an activist. He clashed with the political leaders. He clashed with the religious leaders. He rebuked the religious leaders. He changed paradigms and he shifted mentalities. Are we doing that in the church? We're not doing that. Okay, we are talking now about Syria. What mind shifts have we caused as a church? The governments. At least this government. What challenges have we posed? Nothing. Almost the church is another trumpet of the government. Is this why the church exists? To give some humanitarian aids? There are other charities who can do that even better than the church, I assure you. So we need to step up and become what we are here for, to be the prophetic voice and to be the challenging force in the society. Pose the difficult question, why do we still support selling arms to the Middle East when we know that the Middle East is so explosive? Why are we slow in bringing dialogue and working for peace? It's all, we are not being political here. We are being what the church is about. Challenging voice, prophetic voice in the society. And we are not doing that.
I'm really aware that we're speaking once again against the backdrop of a military intervention in Syria. Can you say why you've always opposed that course of action?
Because history tells us that it never worked. Tell me, I mean, when we bombed Dresden and when Coventry was bombed, did that end the war? No. Those strikes never in history, not even once, we have an example that ended the war. Look at the Vietnam War. How many airstrikes did the Americans have against their enemies? Did that end the war? No. Why are we repeating like idiots and stupid, repeating the mistakes one time after the other, and we are refusing to learn from history? You know why? Because of the economy. We need the money. And there is the economy of war. When are we going to step up and be civilized and learn what God is telling us, the way to deal with our conflicts and with our differences in peaceful means, and use this muscle, not this muscle, not the muscle of the weapon, but the muscle of the word. And be why God created us to be human beings on his image. It means we love each other, we accept each other, and we try our best to live with each other in peace. We're not doing that. I lived in Lebanon for 7 years, and I lived the civil war in Lebanon. And I remember very well, very vividly, when the Marines came to end the war. In the American Marines, and also the British troops came to Lebanon. Did they end the war? No, they made it worse. And I remember when the battleship New Jersey came to the shore of Lebanon, and with my eyes, I saw New Jersey shelling Beirut, turning our night into day. Did that end the war? It added devastation, it added casualties, death, and the war continued raging. So how can we, after all these years of human history and our experiences, still believe that by military action we can end a conflict? rather than bringing the responsible and the sides that they are really fighting into around the table and see how we can together find a way to end that.